Yes, hi, I'm Butler Weeks. I want to take a moment real quick and greet all of our guests. We are so happy that you are with us this morning. I got to meet a family, and we're just so happy that you're here. On the back side of your chair, there's a card that says Welcome Guests. You can fill that out. Come see me after church. I'll be in the foyer, and just tells us a little bit about you. Also, you may have noticed we are a Pentecostal church. So you might have heard us speaking in tongues, and maybe you don't know everything about that. Maybe it makes you a little uncomfortable. That's okay. We understand. Come see one of us. We'd love to talk further and just kind of give you more explaining on where we stand and what we believe and how the Spirit moves in us. So, again, we're so happy you're here, and we just want to thank you and for joining us this morning. And yes, to our live stream again, hi, welcome. Glad you are here as well. So, Butler Weeks, you've heard it like 4 times, but that's my name. My lovely husband just did the announcements. I didn't know he was a stand-up comedian, but that's fun. You did great. Some of you might know, that I'm married and I have a little girl, Mabel. She's the sweetest, most rotten thing ever. I love her. You'll probably see her after service, just running around yelling mama and dada. But other than being a wife and a mom, I'm also the worship and creative arts director here at La Palma. Yeah, and I also teach kindergarten and first grade at our school. Woo! So it's so much fun. I get to work with my dad on the worship side, and I get to work with my mom on the school side, and I cannot say how blessed I am to have the jobs that I have and to be here. This is my second time speaking to, as I would say, big church. So I just want to thank you guys for giving me the space to speak and to preach. I keep saying speak, and Dad's like, you're preaching. So to preach. And you just have given me a safe place to grow and to develop. This is, again, my second time. So I just really appreciate you guys being generous with your time and just supporting me. I love you guys. Thank you. Yeah, woo. My last time I spoke was outside when we had the tents up in 2020, October of 2020. And it's so funny. Miss Linda came up to me and she mentioned the story of watching my sermon online under the tents. And I said, it's so funny because when I think of the tents, I think of you because that's when our lovely Linda came to be part of our La Palma family. And I told her if we had to do tents again just to get her, we'd do it. So love you, Linda. But yes, the last time I spoke was 3 years ago. And it was under the tents, which I'm grateful for because that was a really good introduction into speaking in front of big church, in front of the adults. I've spoken to our youth group several times, and I've even done a co-message with Bankhead and my best friend KK. We did a shared message together, but I've never been at this pulpit in this building speaking a message, preaching a message. So I'm super, super excited. I know some of you don't really know me. You know that I'm probably married and I have Mabel and I work here, but I kind of wanted to tell you the story of how I felt called to lead worship, when I felt called to do worship, and specifically worship at La Palma. So it was about 15 years ago, which is crazy to say, because I don't know, I still feel like 18 years old. I don't know, anyways. How old do you feel now? No, I'm just kidding. Matt, no. I'm just kidding. He could take it. 15 years ago, I was 10, and I thought, I want to learn to play guitar. So my parents, being the wonderful parents that they were and are, they went and they bought me a guitar, and it was hot pink. I mean hot pink. And it said Daisy Rock. And I wanted that guitar because it said Daisy on it, which is my sister's name. And I practiced, and I played, and I learned. Pastor Moses, who was our worship pastor at the time, he gave me lessons, and I worked really hard. I played till my fingers bled, and they went numb, and now I don't feel a thing. So it is great. And I learned to play guitar, and it wasn't anything necessarily more to it other than I just wanted to learn to play guitar. Thought it was cool, thought I'd look cool, it'd sound cool. I could just play my own music when I sang. So I learned to play guitar. About 5 years down the line, this event called Fine Arts comes up, and it's a competition between churches within the SoCal network and between individuals in those churches, and it's for youth students. And there's categories anywhere from photography to preaching, which Elliot did, to human video, and then also to vocal solo performance. So my dad and Pastor Moses, they encouraged me, Butler, you should do a vocal solo performance. You should do it. You should do it. And that word performance, like even to this day, like it still is like, I don't know. Like just something about performing, it just makes me nervous, right? So I agree, and they're coaching me on it. We're doing lessons. You know, Pimo's telling me what I should do with my guitar, how I should play, how I should sing, all these things. So it comes. We go to the competition, and I'm in a room with 4 judges and like maybe 10 other people, most of it being my family and friends. And I perform, and then we go, and it's over a course of a few days, this competition. And on the last day, at the end of everything, everybody comes together in the auditorium or the sanctuary. Most times we did it at Vanguard. Sometimes we did it at just a bigger church. And they tell you, okay, who's going to get Superior with invitation to go to nationals? So if you got Superior, you got to go fly to Arizona or Florida, or this year it's in Ohio. So you got, go Bucks. And so they get to my category, and I'm pretty sure Elliot, he for sure, got Superior with invite. Bank, is that the same year you did a rap? Yeah. What is it? Wait, what is it? God's love will always transform you. Bank did a rap, man. I'm telling you, it was good. Oh, yeah, if you're listening today, put your hands up and praise, because you never know if today's going to be your last day. God's love will always transform you. Sumya, yeah! All right, how many of us vote that Bank does an EP, he does a demo, and we get him to release the rap song? I agree. Yes, amen. We just need some funding for it, so we'll pass the offering buckets by. Anyways, a bunch of us had performed and made it on, and we get to my category, and I'm nervous. Who wouldn't be? You're being judged. You're being told if you're good enough, basically. It's with the best intentions, but still, I'm 15, high school. No 15-year-old girl should have to compete. It's like period. But I'm nervous. So they're going through all these names, and they're not getting to me. And I just thought, I didn't make it. Fun fact, I performed the year before, but with another girl, and we didn't make it. So I was like, okay, round 2, here we go. And they read my name off, and they said, and with Superior and invite to nationals, Butler Bland. And I mean, we just all went crazy. Woo, yeah. And in that same, breath, in that same moment, and in first place, Butler Bland. And I mean, our volume level was already here, and then it goes up, and then they're like, and we'd like to invite you to come and perform on stage for everyone. And I remember like looking at my dad, and he's like, yeah, she will. And I was like, oh, I didn't get to decide if I was going to or not. They did for me. So only one person got placed, right? It wasn't like they got first, second, third. It was like someone got first place, while everyone else either got, to go and whatever. So I got first place, which was crazy. It was awesome. So again, here I am, nervous again. And I have my guitar, I'm tuning, I'm strumming, I'm warming up. It's like I'm going to go box or something, I'm like, someone's rubbing my shoulders, wiping me with a towel, I'm like, they're squirting the water bottle. I don't know. I know nothing of sports or anything. And I remember everyone's, encouraging you. You got this. Like, you got first place. That's awesome. You're like, you're going to kill it. Wow. And I remember my dad, he told me, you've won. It's not a competition anymore. It's just worship. Go up there and lead them in worship. I forgot to mention that it was a worship song that I performed with. It's actually the song we just sang, Like Incense, our first song. Oh, God, you are my God. That was the song that I did. And I got up on that stage, And when I tell you, it's like a cartoon. When my dad said that, it was like the cartoon when the light bulb goes ding. That's how it was for me. It was so like, just, of course. It's just worship. Like, I'd totally forgotten that I'm even singing a worship song. And I got up there, and I started playing that song, and I saw, like, a woman right in this area. It wasn't in this building, but, like, right over in here, raise her hand and start worshiping. And I knew that's what I want to do. I don't want to perform. I don't want to get first place or not even, advance. I don't want to do that. I want to lead people in worship. I want to be used by God to allow people to sense his presence and for chains to break in the moment of worship. I just knew that's what I was going to chase after. That's what I was going to do. So we have a little clip. So they recorded, I think it was Sunny, Pastor Dave's wife, recorded my performance. Please be gentle, okay? But I want to show you, because not many people can say that they have video footage of the moment they felt called to the ministry, felt called to where they are today, and I do. I'm blessed to have that. So, again, be gentle, all right? But let's watch a little bit of 15-year-old Butler.
Oh God, you are my God, and I will never praise.
This is cool.
Oh God, you are my God, and I will never praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will never praise you.
So that was that. Yeah, thank you. Was it first place material? I don't know, but it was so fun, and it was such a big moment in my life. I even have some of the lyrics tattooed. It was my first tattoo to say, like, this is what I'm doing with my life. There's no going back, and God has used me, thankfully. He's used me, and he's given me a position here, and I'm just so grateful. So that's how I got into worship. That's how I got called to worship, and that's why I'm here today. So I am here to encourage you, to preach to you a message about wired for worship, being wired for worship. And today we're going to be talking about worshiping at his feet. And so our text is going to be out of John chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. I'll give you a moment to get there with me. And this is a story about Mary anointing the feet of Jesus. Mary anointing the feet of Jesus. We're going to go ahead and read. So starting on verse 1. Then, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was who had been dead, whom he had raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would later betray him, said, "Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. But Jesus said, "Let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not always have." God, we thank you so much for your word. We ask that you would just move through this time of receiving your word, that you would move through me, that these would not be my own words, but that they would be all of what you would have to say this morning, God. And we just thank you so much. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Imagine the scene with me, okay? The table is set. It's laden with food. And surrounded by her brother Lazarus, the 12 disciples, and Jesus. And there's Mary, right? Martha, she's probably in the kitchen doing what Martha does best, right? Cooking up some good food. And Mary, I'd like to think, overwhelmed by her love for Jesus, takes the one thing that she owns that has any value, any worth, and once again goes and sits at Jesus' feet. You know, I think out of the three siblings here, I think as siblings, we kind of match up pretty well. Elliot is definitely the famous brother, Lazarus, right? If you know Elliot, you know he's great, but he likes attention. So, sorry. Shots fired and he's not even here. It's okay. Daisy's definitely Mary. You know, she's just a sweet soul who just wants all that she can have of God, and I admire her passion and just how she seeks after God, right? So I think of Mary I think of Daisy when I think of Mary, and I'm Martha. Yeah, I'm the one who's like, why isn't she in the kitchen helping me? Do you not see everything that I'm doing right here, Jesus? Right? I'm Mary, but that's okay. I'm going to use it as a strength, right? But I was just thinking about that as I was prepping. We kind of line up really well with these characters. These are real people, okay? Sorry. We don't know why Mary performed this act of worship. We don't know why. It doesn't really say. Now, I want to just briefly mention that this story, or stories similar to this, is mentioned in all four of the Gospels. And in Matthew, Mark, and John, they all line up to be Mary. In Luke's, we don't know. They don't mention Mary. They don't mention a place. They say a prostitute. Who knows if that's still Mary or not? But that's okay. We don't need to know, right? It's okay. It's the same act of worship, of pouring out everything, right? So just wanted to give you a little, I don't know, history. I don't know. But we don't know why Mary poured out this oil. We don't know why she worshiped in this way. Maybe Lazarus could have been getting more attention than Jesus, because Lazarus had just been dead and was raised from the dead. And so maybe she's like, why are you all treating Lazarus like he's the Messiah when he's right here? Let me show you, how you need to be treating Jesus. Who knows? Maybe she was overwhelmed with gratitude looking at her dead brother, or her previously dead brother, who was dead for a significant amount of time and raised back. I can't imagine. I'd be like, Jesus, why'd you wake him up? No, I'm just kidding. I love my brother. I really do. I really do. Can you tell I'm the middle child? Was that clear? No. Or she could have just been overwhelmed with gratitude just for everything that Jesus has done. But I don't think we need to know why. Because her worship and our worship doesn't need to be justified. You don't need to know why I'm worshiping the way that I am. We don't need to know why Mary took the only thing of value she owned and broke it at the feet of Jesus. Worship isn't for others. It's not for us. Worship's for God. And that's between them and God. And we are not ones, we're not ones to try and figure out, I wonder what they're going through that they're worshiping like that, right? It's not for us, not for us. So there's just a few things I want to look at when it came to Mary's worship. And the first thing I want to look at, if you're taking notes, and to sound like my dad, and I encourage you to take notes with me today. First thing I want to look at is the cost of her worship. Now, the first cost is the monetary value, how much the oil was worth, the monetary value of her worship. The alabaster box was filled with a precious perfumed oil called nard, or spikenard, and it was a sweet-smelling oil from a plant in India that was carried overland to the Middle East. I actually have some with me. Pastor Steve, he brought this back from Israel, and I just thought that was so cool. Like, this is the oil. How cool is that? So this is about an ounce. And in Mary's time, in biblical times, most women only had about an ounce, but she had 12 ounces. So she had a lot, and it was worth a lot. The oil was worth, as Judas told us, the oil was worth about 300 denarii. And most people made about one denarii a day. So computing, it was worth about a year's worth of wages, a year's worth of salary. Now, the number 300 doesn't necessarily like make me go, because perfume nowadays it's pretty expensive, right? But I mean, that's like a paycheck or two. I don't know. The number 300 doesn't really like do the shock and awe unless we convert it to today's dollars. Okay, so according to the internet, so fact check me. According to the internet, 2022's national average salary, national average income for a person was about $60,000. $60,000. Now, maybe we bring that down to like 40,000, but still, $40,000, $60,000. Imagine having something that valuable. And she didn't just pour a little bit. She broke it. She ain't getting that back. It's done. It's gone. $60,000. 300 denarii. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, and I'll say I'm speaking for myself. I'm not going to speak on your behalf. But sometimes I can struggle to even give 10%. And I'm sure it's not just me. But here's Mary giving a year's worth of her money at the feet of Jesus, no less. Not even like Judas said, right? Like, why not give it to the poor? When we give today, it goes to the building of the church, of the physical church, but also the greater picture of the church. We have a little bit more. I know where this is going. I know what it is doing. It's sending Janelle to youth convention, right? Yeah, right? We know where it's going. We know what it's going to accomplish. Mary had no idea. She broke it on the feet of Jesus. Like that. Like that. Now, I want you to know, none of what I say today comes from a place of criticism or judgment, only a place of encouragement, because I'm speaking to myself too. So please, don't take this the wrong way, but we could probably be giving more. The next next value I want to look at is her personal value, the personal value of her worship. There wasn't just a monetary value to this oil, but a personal value. That's because scholars tell us that a young girl would have been given this box by her family when she reached marrying age. Then she would give it to her husband as a sign of her commitment and devotion to him. In a sense, it was her inheritance. It was a type of dowry. So we don't know if Mary was married, if she was divorced, if she was widowed, or even more rare for that time, an unmarried adult. I kind of assume that she's unmarried because she still has this jar for herself, this box for herself, but I don't know. But if she wasn't married, then this was big. This was big for her. And in that time, to just break this, the oil could have carried also assurance for a burial plot if she was unmarried. If she wasn't married, she would have to provide the money to be married. She would have had something set up for her burial, and she just broke it and let every bit of that oil go. She didn't take a piece and kind of scoop it up and all right, I'm going to take this back, right? There was no going back. The personal value of this oil was significant. Mary did something in this moment that I also always found a little unusual. She wiped Jesus' feet with her hair. Now, being a woman, but also men who have maybe longer hair, you can get kind of obsessed with it a little bit. I mean, I just got it cut. What you think? He's good? Yeah? Okay. I was obsessed at one point with growing my hair out so long. Like, I wanted the longest hair ever. And now I'm like, maybe a little bit more. But I just always thought it was so strange because I would never want my hair to go on feet, like, especially back in the day, like, they didn't have Jordans or, Air Forces or Skechers. I'm trying to really reach the gap here. Clogs, I don't know. Doc Martens, the Vans, okay. Don't name every shoe thing, okay. They didn't have their feet covered. They had sandals, and they walked on dirt roads. And even if Jesus' feet were washed before this dinner, they're still a little dirty, probably a little stinky. And she wiped his feet with her hair. Another thing is, like, why your hair? There has to be a towel or a napkin. You're at the dinner table, right? Like, so why not just, like, got this, right? Or even just, like, use your I don't know, garment of clothing, but your hair. In Bible times, and even in some cultures and religions today, a woman's hair is to be covered, put up and back, not to be seen by others. To see a woman's hair down was reserved for her husband, for her and her husband, and would be considered immodest outside of this context, and she would be scorned according to 1 Corinthians 11. And in that same chapter, we see that a woman's hair is considered her glory. Now, I'm going to read, it won't be on the screen, but I'm just going to read this verse real quick. And it's 1 Corinthians 11, verse 15. But if a woman has long hair, it is considered a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. So this being said, in this moment that Mary uncovered, let down, and wiped Jesus' feet with her hair, she let go of her own glory. She let go of her reputation. She let go of what people were going to think about her, how they would talk about her. And she allowed herself to be fully seen by Jesus. She was only allowed to be seen in this way by her husband. But she allowed Jesus to see her in this way. What are we covering? What are we putting back? What are we, keeping sealed and under wraps and not fully allowing Jesus to see? He sees all. He knows all. But it's more about our heart. Are we choosing to uncover? Are we choosing to let down our hair? Right? Mary let go of her pride, of her own glory, her traditions, and said, Jesus, you get to see all of me. You get to have it all. She didn't save anything for anyone else, but gave it all to God. So that was the monetary and the personal value. True worship, it costs something to us. It should cost something. It should cost something. The next thing I want to look at is the criticism of her worship. Let's look back at our text starting at verse 4. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, "Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. Bro, don't speak unless you're spoken to, Judas, okay? You're not really in a place to, throw judgment here. No one knew what Judas was about to do. No one knew that, except for Jesus. But the criticism of her worship came from friends. These weren't random people in this room with her. These were her friends. Jesus was very close to this family of Lazarus, Martha, and Mary, right? We know that Jesus wept when Lazarus died. So he's close. And Jesus was often with them, maybe at their house. And so the disciples were there as well. So we can kind of assume that this family And the disciples grew close together solely through their separate relationships with Jesus, right? That's kind of how friendships work even today. You know, maybe Josh and I are friends with somebody on our own, and then maybe Daisy's friends with someone on her own, and then we all hang out, and then we're all friends now. Just kind of how it works. So they're friends. Friends in this room. And because of that friendship, we can imagine the trust that Mary must have felt. The safety she felt in that room to do something like this, because it was big. It wasn't just it was expensive, but she let a lot of things go, and she was seen in a way that she shouldn't have been seen. And the comfortability she must have had to be able to do this, only to have a friend criticize her. Are we critical of people's worship, of our friends' worship? Are we encouraging other people's worship? Even joining in? I don't know. Are we critical? Because not only did it come from friends, but these people were believers. They were believers. I have friends, I have acquaintances who don't believe in God or choose not to practice like they should. I don't know, but maybe there's a little bit more grace when they're like, he's speaking in tongues right now, and it's a little freaky, right? But these were believers. These were believers. The disciples had probably seen more miracles than anyone else. I don't know if all the disciples were present at every miracle Jesus did, but one is enough, right? I mean, I don't know, Jesus walking on water, pretty cool. And they had more evidence to worship than Mary did. They had seen, or Jesus at least had performed 34 miracles up until this point. He had just come back from Jericho, where he healed Bartimaeus of being blind. He restored Bartimaeus and another guy, but restored sight to Bartimaeus. And they saw that. Mary wasn't with them, but yet they criticized her worship. Is there anything that so divides the body of Christ as our worship styles? How prone are we to say, if you don't do it my way, you're not doing it right? Right? Now, Pastor Steve, myself, this team, we worship and we give it our all. And we can be out there. Well, that's because it's not for you. It's for God. And it's okay. It's okay if your worship is sitting down. But it needs to be your worship. You need to be worshiping, right? It's okay if you don't come to the altar. That's okay. But we need to be worshiping. If you are not participating in worship, you are more likely to criticize those who are, right? When you're worshiping, you're focused right here, not right here. So when we're focusing here, we're not worshiping. And we should be. Now, I'm not perfect. I know that's a shock to you. I'm not perfect. I was really expecting an amen from over there somewhere, but he knows what's good for him. I'll visit other churches, not often, but, when I have a day. We actually just went and visited Seacoast Grace because Sam, our special drummer, special guest drummer from time to time, he was playing over there, and it was awesome. They did a phenomenal worship set. It was a Good Friday concert. It was really cool. It was really cool to be a first-time guest somewhere. I don't remember last time I was a first-time guest or a third-time guest. I mean, I don't get to experience that. So, first-time guest, again, I just want to say welcome to you all. I know I got to feel what it's like, and it can be intimidating. So, don't worry. We love you guys, and we want to welcome you in. But I found moments Don't hate me, okay? Don't think of me any less. But I found moments where I was a little critical. I know. I'm working on it. God's working on it. I like to think that when I notice things, it's out of intention to grow. It's out of a desire to learn what I can do and see what I can do. And it's mostly that. It really is. But there's moments where they didn't hit that chord right. Oh, she forgot her words. No, I'm not one to throw stones there, that's for sure. But we can be critical. We can be critical. And we can't be critical of people's worship. Thank goodness that Judas' criticism didn't stop Mary. She kept going, right? She finished her act of worship. But our criticism could lead to people stopping worship, right? Stopping the way that they worship. We just had Pastor Mike and Miss Lisa come and speak. And I love Pastor Mike. I love the way that he worships. He worships so differently from me. He's dancing up and down the aisles. And I love it. I love it because that's how he wants to worship God. That's how he feels Jesus deserves to be worshiped, is with a dance. And it's okay that we're different, and I would not for a second criticize that. In fact, it was refreshing to have that back in here again, because you know what it did? It encouraged you guys. And I saw some of you guys worship like you haven't before. Don't criticize. Join in. Encourage. Support. Sorry. Worship is setting our mind's attention and our heart's affection on God. It's about showing honor and reverence and gratitude to God, who sent his son to die for us, to die for you, that we can have eternal life through him, with him, through repentance, through relationship with him. That's enough. We don't need to see miracles day in and day out to worship God. He's worthy of it, period. Done. We can have eternal life because of the sacrifice that was made for us. That's worthy of praise. My last point that I want to look at is the consequence of her worship. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear the word consequence, I think I'm in trouble. And that's because that's the only type of consequence I received. That's the only type of result I received for my actions, but that's a whole nother story. Fun fact on Like Incense, when we sing, what is it? Be still my anxious urge toward rebellion. It's like an ongoing joke between me and my mother that I look at her, because I had an anxious urge towards rebellion, let me tell you. But the word consequence is defined as a result or effect of an action or condition. So, in the sense of making all the points C's, right? What did we start with? Cost, sorry. Cost, criticism, consequence. We had to throw a nod to Pastor Steve. We got you. Let's look at the result of her worship. So, first thing was, she was commended by Jesus. Commended by Jesus. In Mark chapter 14, verse 6, but Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a good work for me." Man, what I would give to have that said about me by Jesus, right? She has done a good work for me, for Jesus. We should be more concerned with Jesus' response rather than the response of others. I fall victim to this all the time. Yeah. I get up here and, maybe maybe there's not a response like I thought there was going to be, or maybe I hoped that there would be. And I can let that affect me. But my focus shouldn't be on your response. It should be on Jesus' response and how he's moving, how the Holy Spirit is moving in the worship time. According to Mark's account, Jesus goes on to say, this won't be on the screen, "Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." I have a very strong feeling Mary didn't do this to be immoralized, right? Or memorialized. There it is. Anyways, she didn't do it to become famous, or she did it because that was her act of worship in that moment. That's what she felt Jesus deserved, and she wanted to give everything she could, and that was everything she could. But our worship has greater consequences, greater results than we can imagine, and that we might not ever see. But just like I mentioned earlier, Pastor Mike, he's dancing before the Lord, right? Kind of like David. And Pastor Steve's going to bring an awesome message next week. I'm super excited about it. But to some people, Pastor Mike might have looked like a fool, might have looked silly. But his worship, it set off this chain reaction within us. And we began to worship like we never did before. Mary's worship is talked about today, is encouraging people today, is setting people free from their pride today, is letting people go. They're not held back anymore in their worship because they're encouraged by her story today. Another consequence of her worship was she anointed Jesus for his burial. Jesus was crucified. So this dinner took place the day before he entered Jerusalem, Palm Sunday, right? Behold, he comes. That's a good song. Oh, we're going to do that song, Days of Elijah. We're doing that song at our upper room worship night, so it's going to be good. Jesus was crucified 6 days after this dinner on a Friday. Now, in Jewish culture, they would anoint and bury bodies on the Sabbath, which was Saturday. So, if Mary had not broken this jar and anointed Jesus' feet, he would have never been anointed for his burial. He wouldn't have had a proper burial. She had no idea. No one in that room knew what was going to happen 6 days later. Or I'd like to think they'd all be grabbing their alabaster box, their jar. They'd be grabbing everything they could, right? But she had no idea. They had no idea. Our worship has greater consequences, greater results and effects than we can imagine. Your worship could help somebody else in their breakthrough. Your worship could be the catalyst for someone else's change, for someone else's worship, right? On stage, we are the worship leaders. It's not just me. It's not just Claudia or Pastor Steve. It's everyone on this stage is a worship leader. Again, our worship's not for you, but it can be an example to you. As I thought about Mary's worship, I thought back to how we don't know why she did it. And again, I don't think we need to know why, but there's a song that I loved growing up. Yes, Mom, you can come now as I close. There's a song I loved growing up, and in fact, one of the schoolyard ladies, she would play this CD over and over and over again after school as she swept the sand back into the sandbox. We used to have a sandbox. It was terrible. And I'd say, go to number 7. Go to number 8. 7 was the intro for 8. And Pastor Steve wrote this song, and it's called If You Only Knew. And I've always been moved by this song. And it says, if you only knew, which, in fact, watch. I learned it in sign language, and I performed it in sign language. I love this song. I wanted to perform it in every way that I could. I learned it on guitar. I sang it, and I signed it. The song has so much power to me because it says, if you only knew what the Lord has brought me through, if only you could see all that he's done for me, the places that I've been, my life so deep in sin, if only you could see all that he's done for me, then you would understand why I lift my hands. You would know why I jump. I'm getting to your intro. You would know why I shout. You would know why I dance. If you only knew where I was and where I am today, you would know why I worship. And I think this is Mary's perspective. If you only knew all that God had done in Mary's life. He raised her brother from the dead and probably did more that's not even recorded in the Bible. If you only knew, then you would understand. This jar that she had, the box, again, it's told in 4 different gospels, so it's a box in some, a jar in some. It's something. It's holding this oil. It's alabaster. This box, this jar, it was sealed intentionally to only be broken, only to be opened once. There was no popping the cork, pouring it out, putting the cork back in. Once you opened it, that was it. It took intentionality to break that jar, to break that box. Our worship requires intentionality. Just like we talked about this morning of seeking after God with intentionality. Allowing ourselves to be broken. Another thing I want to point out is when she chose to wipe Jesus' feet with her hair, we know she let go of her tradition and her pride and her glory. She didn't realize that she would carry that scent with her in her hair for days on after. The oil, the scent, is trapped in her hair. I know because when my hair's dirty, it holds a scent. It was in her hair. And she could smell and remember that moment. David reminded me this morning, our scent, our sense of smell is the closest thing to memory. It's our closest sense to memory. It triggers our memory better than anything else. So I'd like to think as she went through her days, maybe even learning that Jesus was going to be crucified, she remembers that moment of true worship. When Jesus rode into Jerusalem, he had to have smelled of spikenard. There had to have been a strong scent. When people came into contact with Jesus, when they met him, they smelled this oil, this sweet, sweet smelling oil that I'd like to note they only used to anoint kings and anoint people for burial. So her anointing was twofold. And then when they came into contact with Mary, they said, I know that smell. She smells like him. She smells like Jesus. Do we smell like Jesus this morning? Is our worship being carried with us? Do we carry the fragrance of true worship with us so that when people meet us, they say, I know that smell. She smells like Jesus. She smells like Jesus. Our true worship doesn't end today, doesn't end this morning, doesn't end at this altar. We carry that fragrance with us. We carry the presence of God with us. When people meet you, who do they smell? I know that's like maybe weird, but who do they smell? Do they smell Jesus? Have we allowed ourselves to be broken and poured out enough to carry that fragrance with us? Have we humbled ourselves, submitted ourselves? When Mary got down at Jesus' feet, she took the role of a servant. We need to do the same. We need to be intentional in our worship. Our worship's going to cost us something significant, something great, and not just in the money sense, but in our personal relationship with God and the personal things. Your worship might cost you to give up a job that you've always wanted, or a relationship. Your worship's going to cost you something, because you have to be able to get fully seen by God. Fully seen. I want to thank the live stream audience for joining us this morning. We pray that you have a good week, and we'll see you back here next week.